So if rent is the most important issue, which I think we all agree, it's like fucking absurd. The rent freeze was like incredibly effective communication, right? This idea, because everybody else is talking about, we're going to build all these units. When you're drowning, you're not worried about like someone building you a boat. You need a life vest. I get that 100%. I think that makes sense. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that you can do that to like about 50% of the units in New York.
Yeah.
Because those are like,
apartments pretty much.
they're like the rent stabilizer, rent controlled units.
About 2.5 million New Yorkers live in these kinds of apartments.
Got it.
Yeah.
How do you offer relief to the other 50%? And let me just clarify to people listening, like those other 50% aren't necessarily people who are wealthy.
They're just living in market rate units.
And people that work here and they just didn't have the ability to get one of these, rent controlled units.
And so I'd first say there's rent control, which is a very small minority.
Yeah.
The vast majority of what we're talking about is rent stabilization. Rent stabilization means there's a limit on how much your rent can increase every year. It's not what your rent is, it's what the increase will be. And it's all determined by a board called the Rent Guidelines Board, composed of 9 people that the mayor appoints.
You can appoint them.
Yes.
But I think the appointing process might even take a little bit, right? It's not like day one you do it.
It's each of these terms are on kind of a rotating basis.
Got it.
And there are a number of these terms that are open right now.
Got it. So you can point some, and there might be some people that are empathetic to your philosophies already. So
because they actually did a study. That same board, under Eric Adams, did a study. It found that landlord profits had increased 12% of those units in the same year that the median household income of tenants of those units was $60,000. And with that information, they decided, let's hike the rent again. So it actually doesn't have to do with the data.
Got it.
But the point that you're making is right, which is that we have to have a housing policy for all 8.5 million people. That's why you couple a rent freeze with construction of 200,000 truly affordable homes. The reason I say truly is because, like, I represent Steinway in Astoria, right? I'll call a constituent, I'll say, there's a new affordable housing development coming up. Do you want to apply? They'll say, how much do I have to make? I say $140,000. They hang up the phone.
Yeah, affordable housing.
Because how are they going to afford that, right?
Yeah.
And so my point is thinking about affordability more with the median household income in New York City, which is $70,000 for a family of 4.
I love it.
So you have to increase that, and you have to make it easier for the private sector to also build.
I agree with you 100%. Like, I think Ezra Klein put out a great book that I think that he's been like unfairly maligned by a lot of people on the left, but like where he's just going, hey, I appreciate democratic policies. I want to implement them. I think they're better for people, but there are certain things that we need to remove so that we can be competitive in an open market.
And I think that there's a truth to that where, look, I'm somebody who believes in the public sector. I believe in regulation. I also believe that if I can't give you the reason for the regulation, then it has no reason to exist. I cannot justify a restaurant giving the city every year $25 for the right to sell a frozen dessert. That doesn't make sense. Right? That is something that should be eliminated. I cannot justify someone who wants to open a barbershop filling out 24 forms, going to 7 agencies, and then attending 12 in-person events. That does not make sense to me. So I think that there is a truth to some of the regulations we've created have made it far more difficult to build housing. And even the justifications we used back then are not the ones that have been borne out today. So we need to change those.
So how do we, first of all, I completely agree. And as like someone who has someone renovating above me, please believe I like the fact that there is regulation. Do you know what I mean? Like I have a kid who's 21 months old. It's like they want to sleep, and if somebody's just going to be banging 21. This guy's a rapper.
21 months old.
Yes. So and so never listen to 21 Savage.
Apologies.
And so I guess my question is like, how do we get those 200,000 units out? Because the real only thing that's going to solve this crisis, and it's a legitimate crisis, like, is more units. You can freeze rent, you can do all these things.
You have to do it with more.
And some people, and I'm sure you would probably acknowledge this, said like even freezing rent within the controllable units that you have could cause like a surplus pressure in the non-controlled units, and those might go up. So while we protect those 50%, the other people who are making the same amount of money as them, because of those market pressures, could have increased rent.
Corporations are going to make their money.
And that's why you have to take this as an opportunity to also tackle the costs that landlords are facing. Because when I speak to landlords,
talk to me about that. That's interesting.
I hear that the insurance of affordable housing units has doubled in the last few years. Right. And that cost is one that is driving so much of the pressure.
That's interesting.
And there's a number of those landlords that came together to create a different risk pool through something called Milford Street Captive. And they've managed to depress that cost. What if the city invested in that kind of a mechanism to help those landlords address that? The other thing here is that...
Are they gouging the affordable housing units because they know that they're government backed?
No, they're gouging them because there's money to be made.
But right? In the same way that like universities can charge whatever they want for an education because they know the government will back the loans. Like, is that
to me, what this gouging more looks like is there are many providers who are now paying the cost of a number of bad landlords who have made insurance such a high part of doing business.
Got it.
Right. And so you have better providers who are pooling their risk together.
Got it.
And so my point here is if you invested a significant amount of capital, you could assist that kind of an intervention.
Got it.
The second thing is you have a property tax system that's broken in New York City, one that effectively penalizes rental apartments and the owners of those rental apartments. And if you had a system that incentivized the construction of rental apartments, you could have a very different landscape of housing. So to me, it's freeze the rent and take on the cost of insurance and fix a broken property tax system and streamline development and have the city produce 200,000 homes. And often when I've talked about 200,000 homes, that's just what I think the city should do. I think the private sector should be doing an immense amount of additional construction.
But they're going to need incentive structures as well, right? Like there was that program, I'm forgetting what it was. Was it...
and 421A, then 485A?
I think that you're talking about the HTPSA that just sunset recently.
You're speaking about the...
That's the extension of 421A.
No, these are separate things.
Oh, okay.
You're talking about 2019 rent laws.
Yes. But that's not what I was referencing.
Then there's the tax incentive.
There's
421A, now 485X or 45W. Yeah.
I'm talking about the one that basically allowed developers over a 35-year period. So essentially the idea is there was like a tax abatement for 35 years. For the first 25 years, they didn't pay. The last 10, they started increasing 10% every year. And at the end of the 35, all the units were now free market. But I think at a certain point in time, 30% of them were like rent controlled.
There's stabilization and there's a set aside for affordability.
And again, I don't know like what metrics work, and I'm not like an economist and I'm not a developer. But to me, just from talking to some people in development, they said that like, since this, I think, what was it, the HTPSA, since that, or if it was this program, was this Affordable New York?
HSTP is the Housing Stabilization Tenant Protection Act.
That was the de Blasio thing. That's not this thing that I'm talking about.
Yeah, you're basic. Well, I'll kind of step back for a second.
Please, yeah.
You'll hear from developers that the HSTPA passed in 2019 made it more difficult for them to maintain a lot of housing units because it put limitations on what they could do with regards to profit and how they could push many tenants out of those same tenant buildings. At the same time, there's the incentive through 421A that has since been renewed to become something called 485, which is a tax incentive for the construction of new housing.
Is that the New York Yes or whatever, or is that
Affordable New York? Then there's City of Yes.
City of Yes.
These are three different things.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we can
but I think here's the thing is that most New Yorkers don't have time to know every single set of numbers and letters.
I know a single one.
Right?
It's
but that's representative of more New Yorkers than those who know.
Yeah.
And that's our job to break this down. Right? What City of Yes does is it makes it easier to construct more housing across New York City. It changes zoning regulations. It's estimated to allow for the additional construction of a little less than 90,000 new units.
Yep.
We have to build on top of that. It has to be even more than that.
Yep.
My point here is that when I speak to developers, we'll have disagreements about labor. We'll have disagreements about maybe materials and the cost of it. One place we have a real agreement about is the cost of waiting. Many of these developers will tell me one of the most expensive things they have to deal with is the wait. They'll put in an application, they'll put forward a bid, and then they'll have to wait and wait and wait. And we know time is money. Because you're not just waiting, you're also paying other people who are waiting with you. And there's an environmental law at the state level called SECRA. SECRA requires you, when you're putting forward an application, to estimate the traffic flows of 10 to 15 years from now. So when they did the Williamsburg rezoning, they were asking people to estimate these traffic flows before Lyft and Uber existed in New York City. And so now, obviously, their presence in New York City makes a mockery of any estimate that was made prior to that. And yet that estimate is still one you could be held liable for in court, saying you said it would be this and now it's this. And so to me, these are examples of what you're bringing up earlier of how do we bring these regulations more in line with reality, and how do we ensure that we are able to build the immense amount of housing we need so that we can actually have New Yorkers stay here. That's the goal, because we're building 4 homes per 1,000 people. Jersey City's at 7. Tokyo's at nearly 10.
What is Houston at?
Tell me.
They're doing an unbelievable amount, like, because there's just no regulation. Now, there's different circumstances. You're not building on top of each other, and there's a lot more land. I understand it. And I don't like those comparisons. generally, because New York is such a specific city, we're living on top of each other and next to each other, and there's different considerations that we have to make.